Let's take a look at this ellipse. This ellipse has a major radius A and a minor radius B. That is, it is longer this way than it is this way, right? Mathematically, this can be described by the following equation. We say that x squared divided by a squared plus y squared divided by b squared is equal to 1, right? So if you want to draw an ellipse, take a piece of string, right? Loop it together, tie it in a knot, and then I've taken two hooks here and I've magnetically attached them onto this board. That's how I drew this ellipse. And you just wrap the piece of string around, and then I've taken this L-shaped tool so that you can see, so that my hand doesn't get in the way. And if you just go around with your pencil, right, or marker or whatever, then your pencil or marker will trace out the ellipse, right? As long as you just keep the string taut as you move around, okay? So, mathematically, it says that how an ellipse is defined mathematically. It says that the distance, the sum of the distances from each respective focus, right, is always equal to a constant value. So this distance plus this distance is equal to this distance plus this distance, and this, and that is equal, and those are equal to this distance plus this distance, and then those are equal to this distance. Oh, I nudged it a little bit. This distance plus this distance, and then those are equal to this distance plus this distance. Of course, neglecting any experimental error, as I just bumped this magnet, right, just a millimeter or so. So the sum of the distances to any given point on the ellipse, the sum of the distances from each of the respective foci, will always be equal to the same value, right? It's a constant number. So if we take a look at this equation and we want to graph an ellipse, we solve for y, right? Because we have to solve for y as a function of x so that we can graph it with our calculators. We have x and y like this. Then first thing we'll do is subtract this term from both sides, so minus x squared over a squared. Remember, a is just a constant value, so we can just leave it as a letter and then plug in anything we want later on. So these two will cancel, right? And then we'll have y squared over b squared is equal to 1 minus x squared over a squared. And then multiply times b squared on both sides. But remember, this whole thing has to be multiplied times b squared. So these guys will cancel, and then we'll have y squared is equal to 1 minus x squared divided by a squared times b squared. Taking the square root to isolate this y by itself, so then we'll have y is equal to plus or minus square root 1 minus x squared divided by a squared times b squared, like so, right? So if we let a equal 4 and b equal 2, right, in your calculator, if you want to graph this, the positive root will graph this top half of the ellipse, and the negative root, right, will graph the bottom half of the ellipse. So you have to let y, the first, y1 in your y editor equal to positive square root of 1 minus x squared over a squared, and then that, in parentheses times b squared. And then let y2 equal negative square root 1 minus x squared over a squared, and then in parentheses so that you can multiply times b squared. And so let a equal 4 and b equal 2. So just put a 4 here and a 2 here, right? So you have x squared over 16, and this will be 4. 2 squared is 4. And you'll see this thing, it'll be graphed out, right? And this number right here, this point on the graph, will be negative 4, 0, right? This point over here, right here, will be positive 4, 0. This point right here will be 0, 2. And this point right here will be 0, negative 2. And in general, this will be negative a, comma, 0. This will be positive a, comma, 0. This will be 0, comma, positive b. And this will be 0, comma, negative b. Right? Okay, so if you want to do this at least once, certainly in preparation for the exam, I would do it, be familiar with it, be able to do it a couple of times, just understand kind of, what's going on. And it's a good idea to graph this and just to get accustomed to graphing this quickly, on an exam, so you can do it fast and you know where these points are, right? So that's it for the ellipse. I'm going to step out of the way and give you a clear screenshot. Try it out.